here, and then we've combined it with some historic maps. These little squares that you see, old mining buildings, things like that. But then you see all this, but then you also see this gray shading underneath. Can anybody tell me what that might be?
Tunnels.
Tunnels? Those are the mines. So everywhere you see this gray shading, there is mines underground. So here it's just solid gray shading there when they would rot the pillars. And he would tell them which ones was this going to cave in on us. Yeah, no, I wouldn't be doing that. He also was down there whenever they would hit, he was drilling, and the water pressure was so great and shoved the drill back into him and it killed him. Very dangerous work, really dangerous work. So needless to say, we had a lot of people that we lost in the mines, with accidents and things of that nature. But a very rich history, and a lot of the communities that were there, their descendants are still here. They've just moved to the other side of the mountain. And it's a wonderful opportunity for them, you know, with this park being open, to come back and connect with that history. We're hoping that, you know, eventually we can reach out into the communities and tell everybody a little bit more about the history and about the people who built Birmingham. If it was not for this iron industry here, Birmingham would not have been created. So it started during the Civil War, actually. In 1863, the Confederate government purchased land, and also they paid to have a railroad system put in, because up until that point, there really was not a viable railroad system here in the South that would enable us to take industry to the next level. So we were definitely far behind in the industrial explosion. And they used mules. They actually kept the mules down inside the mines in rooms, and a lot of them were so unaccustomed to light that if they brought them up very quickly, they could go blind or even die. They would go mad. So it was, they had small rails that they would use the carts on with the mules, but the larger system didn't come in until much later. Actually, I think it was 1878. Don't quote me on that. Get you guys to do a little bit of history and look it up for me. But yeah, it was an extensive system. A lot of workers, a lot of people died, and a lot of people lived here. There was a lot of moving in and out. Where archaeology comes in with the history is to either prove or disprove what's written. You know, history is very subjective. You know, you read things and you think, oh, well, this is the way it was. Not necessarily. People put things in print that they want known. And we found that in the early or late 1800s, early 1900s, there was a movement of the miners. They wanted to be paid in cash instead of being paid in clacker. And so the companies got together and they said, okay, well, we'll do this, but we're going to give you the cash at a discounted price. So you can get paid in cash, you're just going to get less. Or you can get paid in clacker and get the whole amount. So a lot of families did that. For a long time, I had no clue what it was. And then I happened to be looking through Google eBooks, these catalogs, bringing them back. He kept leading them in to safety. And he went back in one last time, and they said, well, where did he go? And he said, well, he went back in to make sure everybody was out. And the guy was never found. They never could find him. Well, 20 years later, they had another explosion, another collapse of the roof, and several miners were trapped down in there. And one by one, they all made their way to the top. And the last one came up, and we said, where's the guy that was helping us? And they said, what are you talking about? There's nobody else left down there. And he said, no, there was a guy, and he was helping us out. He said he didn't look like us. He looked like one of those old-time miners. You know, he had the old equipment on. And they're like, nobody's in there. So they believed that that particular miner, the ghost of the miner, was leading those people to safety. I believe his name was Jeffrey. I can't remember his last name. But he actually did die in a mining accident. We found a record where it showed that he had died in a mine collapse. And so, believe it or not, that's the story. They are just amazed. You know, they can't believe what a forest is. There's some people coming in, and they're going. There was a strike in 1899. And so the miners were on strike and they brought in a bunch of scabs. You guys know what scabs are, right? They're the people that would come in and do the job when the real workers were on strike. So these scabs come in from Georgia and they're gathered together in one of the houses out here at Old Escudo. And someone starts shooting through the window and wounds, I think it was 3 of them, and killed 1. Now, this guy, the scab from Georgia, was an African American. So, you know, you would think in that time period, you're not going to hear anything more about that, right? But a couple of weeks later, there was another article. A lawyer had actually come down and was suing the company for damages for this guy because they told him that it was okay to work, it was safe. So I'm like, man, that is so cool. I looked all over trying to find the court case and never could. And then I found out that the company that he was working for, Robinson Mining Company, had been absorbed by PCI, so they were actually trying to sue the wrong company. And the community I'll go first and knock down the spider web. He's looking at you. You can get a stick in here. Yeah. I do that sometimes. I got hit like with 8 the other day and I'm like, screw this. I picked up a stick. Okay. Come out here and date and see this. Come on, those actually were metal hits. I brought out a metal detector, and that's usually how we find where old sites are. We use a metal detector and start listening for those clues. And we mark them with flags to see where they're scattered out, and that'll give us a good idea of where we need to put shovel pits, which is basically a round hole. We're standing at Old Escudo, which was a community that was here in the late 1800s and it was gone by 1910. A lot of the house structures were disassembled and moved somewhere else, but you can still see the chimney bases. If you get nails and glass and brick fragments, chances are you're pretty close to a site. And so that's what we start with, is the metal. But right there is our chimney base. That pile of rocks and bricks. It doesn't look like much right now, but once you start clearing off the top of it, if you get down so far, you'll see it's probably still intact at the base. And that's where we find a lot of material, because people lived around the fireplace. They ate there, they cooked there, they did their work there, you know, the women's domestic work, the kids played there. So that's your most active part of the house. And so we're hoping that once we get these chimney bases cleared down, we'll actually find something. We did find some chimney bases at Smythe, and one of them had a bottle, and it was a whole bottle, and it was, let me get this right, Dr. King's Imperial Remedy for Consumption. Long title. And it was banned. He had hidden that underneath that chimney base in something my grandmother calls a hidey hole. You know, where you hide the things you don't want anybody else to see. That was his hidey hole, and he stuck it in there. Get that cleared off, and they see the entire base, which would be really cool. What are you doing? Look at that, everyone. We've got some pottery. And over here, wow, big piece of rock. And I would like to collect it, but I can't yet. That's the crazy, maddening thing about archaeology, is that you see it and you can't just pull it out because it's in situ.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that everything is where it was originally when we found it, so that we can piece it all back together. But this one definitely is going to have some material in it that's going to be helpful to dating the site. They said that this community was here by 1880, but I think it was actually a lot earlier, because the mines that are nearby were opened, well, they started digging 1863, and these people had to live somewhere. So, you know, I'm wondering if maybe this is a little bit older than they think it was. It's a centipede on a stick.
He leaving me far from it. You got him to see?
Look at them legs.
Oh my God, leave. There he goes.
It's interesting. Anybody tell me what historic event might be happening? Yes, the Depression. So this is part of
Programs that they started to help.
WPA, I believe, yes.
exactly WPA. So this was part of it, and we had the people who needed it. So
That used to be a door down.